Does that work?
That's work perfect. Thank you.
I've been asked to read a statement. My name is Janice Vincenzo. Since I am unable to attend tonight's Board of Education meeting, I asked Mr. Bartoloni to read the statement on my behalf. He declined, stating that he was directed not to by Mr. Castle and District Attorney. So I asked Kathy Harrington to read the statement on my behalf. In speaking with other parents, I discovered that there are many in our community who would like to attend Board of Education meetings but have difficulty doing so. At the last meeting, I inquired why the meetings are not live streamed and also recorded and posted so everyone in our community can be involved. I was informed such action is not required and there may be costs involved. I do not find this to be a satisfactory answer, and neither do others in our community. As Wallkill Panthers, we shouldn't simply settle to do what is required. As parents, we encourage our children to do their best, to do more than what is just required. Don't settle for passing, aim higher, do more. We tell our children to include everyone and not purposefully leave others out. We ask our children to imagine what it's like to stand in another person's shoes and make decisions that are respectful and inclusive. So shouldn't our school district do the same? We need to lead by example. By live streaming and posting the meetings, we have a wonderful opportunity to include everyone. In fact, contrary to the current practice, the board's own policy mandates they provide the minimum required, more than the minimum required by state law when it comes to communication. Board of Education Policy 3100 states, the Board of Education will attempt to ensure that all of the citizens of the school district are kept informed of its activities and channels of communication beyond those required by law. Therefore, the Board of Education shall encourage the use of all appropriate means for supplying the community with accurate information about the schools. If this is our policy, why aren't meetings live streamed and recorded and posted for everyone? We need to do better. In order to determine if our community supported the live streaming and posting of recorded meetings, a petition was developed. This petition has been signed by over 380 citizens. The petition states, as citizens who reside within the Wallkill Central School District, we are requesting the Board of Education meetings be live streamed and recorded for the benefit of the community. Wallkill parents are involved and invested in our public schools. However, for many citizens, it is difficult to attend a 7 p.m. Board of Education meeting. Child care issues, late work schedules, lack of transportation, children's sporting events, and other conflicts prevent attendance of many. For those that have children without a disability or are disabled themselves, it is even more difficult to attend. It would be to the benefit of the school district and the community at large to allow citizens to view meetings live or at their own availability. This would help keep the community informed as to what is going on in our school district, encourage a more diverse group to attend meetings, and allow transparency in our governing body. Live broadcasts and recordings of meetings provide residents with fair and equitable access to the information discussed. It would also increase participation. Every other school district in Ulster County records and live streams their Board of Education meetings. Newburgh, Valley Central, Monroe Woodbury, and Cornwall do the same. Why don't we? If we feel that the Wallkill Central School District's Board of Education meetings should be recorded and televised, please show your support by signing the petition. More than 380 people signed. I thank you all for listening to our concerns and taking our requests under careful consideration. Submitted with sincerity, Janice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have received the petition, and we will speak about this. It was brought up last month. We will bring up the goal meeting on the 28th. We'll discuss it at that time. Next up is Kathy Mander. Is that you? Oh, Ed. Hi, Kathy.
How are you? How are you guys?
Your handwriting's like a doctor. It's horrible.
We don't have to write anymore. It's everything's electronic now. They took writing away from us. I know you guys would be sad if I didn't address the mask thing, so I'm just gonna say real quick, high schools used to be doing pretty good with the mask rates and that kind of stuff. Middle school, they're Nazis over there. I mean, my kid got yelled at for taking a sip of water because the teacher said she had a health condition. I think we all know that it's got to be, 10 to 15 minutes within 6 feet for transmission. I don't think sips of water. I know teachers have 504s. I know that they have their health conditions that they're concerned about. But a sip of water, I mean, that needs to be addressed. I mean, they really, I talked to Mr. Camilio the first week of school. He sat down with a team of teachers for my kid. They did mask breaks for 2 days, and then it went right back to the beginning. And it needs to be addressed. These kids, they're playing sports after school. They need to hydrate all day. They shouldn't be prevented from taking water breaks during the day. So anyway, that's that. That's not the biggest thing I wanted to talk about. Honestly, the biggest thing that I wanted to talk about, which is going to get me labeled as a domestic terrorist evidently, is the fact that my kids are being bombarded with transgender bullshit in school. First day of school, my son had to answer a question on a thing about what does he identify as? Trans this, cis this, non-binary that. Listen, I don't care what any kids do, but when you're bringing this up to teenagers, when you're planting the seeds to them, that's suggestion. That's not inclusion, and it needs to stop. My 7th graders, second week of school, English teacher takes them to the library, and what do they read? Melissa's story, George, whatever, about little George who turns into Melissa. This is the suggested book to take out of the library. For 12-year-olds, they don't know what the hell is going on in their body with their hormones at 12. That's suggestive. That is not appropriate for kids. In our nice little notification, it says that you need my consent if my kids are asked about sexual behavior and attitudes. That's not happening, and that needs to happen. It needs to stop. We can be inclusive. We don't have to be suggestive that, hey, it's a cute little story about a 4th grade boy who really is sure it's Melissa. No, we don't have to talk about that with kids. That's my job as a parent. That's everybody's job as a parent. And if those parents aren't doing it, it's still not the school's job. It's still not the school's job. The school needs to stay in their lane on this stuff. I don't want to get involved in the whole critical race theory stuff. I don't care. They need to leave this stuff alone. I deal with it with my kids. Parents need to deal with it with their kids. Social studies teachers, English teachers should not be the ones dealing with this with kids. It's not right. So that needs to be addressed. I know that comes directly from this panorama education thing that we signed a contract with last year. You need to start looking into what's being asked. Because my high schooler shouldn't be asked the first day of school if he's trans, binary, non-binary, whatever. He shouldn't have to fill that out the first day of school. Nobody has any right to that information. That's not helping inclusion. That's gathering information that nobody has any right to. And that needs to stop. You guys need to really start addressing that. My third point of interest, which I didn't write on that, is I know that the governor of New York now is really eager with the vaccine being available for 5 to 11-year-olds and really pushing for schools to hold vaccine clinics. I want to be notified of that. My kids will not be in school any day that those are going on. Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My motion to the board by amendment. I know I didn't sign up, but I came in late and I came in through the wrong door. So is there if I address the board for you?
Sure, go ahead. Tell us who you are, please.
Sure. My name is Phil Rodriguez. My kids have been coming to Wallkill School since kindergarten. I'd like to start off by saying that up to this point, I've been very pleased with the education they've received here. I've had no complaints. I've actually never attended a board meeting. However, some things have been happening recently that I'm not here to point fingers at anyone. I'm not here to blame anyone. I think the obstacles that educators have been facing for the past roughly 2 years, I don't think anybody could have known what anyone was going to be going through, let alone what we're still going through even today. I do want to kind of second what Kathy said. My daughter was also asked the same question. I, as a parent, was not very pleased with that question being asked, not because I'm ignorant, but because that's a discussion that I have with my own children. What I'm really here for is to ask some very specific questions based on some concerns that I'm having. Again, this is not to point fingers at teachers. I think teachers are overwhelmed. I think most educators are. Just a little background on myself, I've been in the same field for 20 years, so I'm seeing it myself firsthand. But the concerns that I have are based on two questions. My first question to the board would be, what are we doing as a district to identify the academic gaps that kids are having coming back from non-direct instruction for almost 2 years? The reason why I'm asking that question is because there seems to be, I don't want to say a lack of understanding, but it seems to be that where we have some of our educators, and I say some because it is not all, who are just bombarding students with hours upon hours of homework. And now, don't get me wrong, my kids are honest kids, they're very good kids. We have their friends at my house all the time, and we have these discussions to see where they're at with things. What we're noticing is that a lot of these kids are absolutely falling apart because of the amount of work that they're receiving on a nightly basis. We as Wallkill try to make our kids well-rounded people so they can be productive citizens in our country. However, I'm finding it's getting more and more difficult to be able to balance that on a nightly basis when both of my kids, who are honor students, are finding 4 to 4.5 hours of homework every single night. So my second question would be, once these academic gaps have been determined by the district, what are your plans to address these gaps? For example, if my kids are struggling in certain classes, it isn't because they're not willing to work hard, it's not because they cannot achieve, it is because they have some legitimate gaps in their learning because they have not received direct instruction for almost 2 years. Having a recorded lesson on a meet is not the same as having a teacher in front of you to directly instruct you for about 40 minutes a day. Now that I'm seeing these gaps with my own kids, I have to say that the results I've seen with what this district is offering is not sufficient at all. And what I mean by that is when they have gone to their teachers to ask for support, which every student has a right to, they're finding that their teachers are not available. Whether it is because of scheduling conflicts during the course of the day, but even after school, they are not available. And now my kids are being forced, in some cases, to come to school a half hour early when they're already up at 5:30 a.m. And I just find that to be unacceptable. And I find it to be a little disturbing that we are somehow not understanding what these gaps were before we reopened these schools. And you're not alone in this. This is a nationwide issue. This isn't just local to Waltham. This is every school district in the country right now. We are seeing kids at record paces having disciplinary problems. We're seeing kids who are coming to school with incredible gaps of learning, and not only just the information, but the skills to be able to process that information. So I want to know, what are we willing to do? What are we going to do? How are we going to encourage our educators to understand that it is not business as usual? We cannot think that somehow these kids should be on chapter 3 of a math book when they don't even know the basic fundamentals of that math, and they have no business being out of chapter 1 yet. And then it's being justified by people telling my kids, this is to get you ready for the Regents exam. A Regents exam that no one has seen in 2 years. I find that to be unacceptable. On top of that, when they're talking now about testing and, of course, timing all of the exams that teachers are giving in classrooms. And when I brought that question up to an educator, their answer to me was, well, we're trying to get them ready for the timed exams for Regents exams, BSAT, so on and so forth. But again, I have to ask the question, how are we thinking that it's business as usual? These kids are not the same kids they were. Yes, on paper, they are 9th graders. In reality, they are still 7th graders because they have not been directly instructed for 2 years. There are learning gaps, there are social gaps, there are all sorts of problems that these kids are facing, and we are not addressing it effectively. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just real quick, Phil, I think first and foremost, some of the things you spoke of, I would ask that you do meet with the building principal on that.
Absolutely.
And I know you're an administrator, you may be able to offer some suggestions. But district-wide, early on, we did recognize that there's going to be gaps in learning. And as a result, and while this impacted you or not, I don't want to speak specifically for you. I think that's something you need to meet with Mr. Massapus and really drill down more of what you just said so that we can specifically address that.
Absolutely.
But what we did in the district, we took a two-pronged approach. We had to make sure we had to address the social-emotional concerns that you spoke of. So we now do have a social worker in all our buildings. We didn't have that. And we just actually had admin council the other day, and we spoke about how are we utilizing the social workers. So there's more that has to be done, but they are, at the elementary level, they are pushing in. And then, of course, they're available for students at the secondary level as well. But I think more needs to be done on that aspect. On the academic side, we did have at the secondary level last year, and also at the elementary, we had after-school programming for kids. We then carried that over to the summer, where at the elementary level, we had reading tutoring, we had ENL programming, and we also had a K-6 intervention program. And then we did the same thing at 7 and 8, and then we also, at the high school, had a credit recovery program. We're also carrying that over to the school year as well in regards to the interventions, having after-school programs. We also added a AIS teacher at the elementary level to have more math AIS, because we felt that was going to be a big part where kids were going to fall behind. At the secondary level, we do have teachers who would stay after school, that professional period. I think that's why I think you guys specifically addressed that with the principal, so we could really drill down what's going on there.
Right, and I appreciate your response. I just want to let you know that we are in the process of addressing it directly with the teacher. Obviously, I understand the chain of command, and that's what we're going to do. However, the reason why I'm speaking here is because I feel the public forum is where it belongs. We are not alone when we're feeling this as parents, and like I said, we've never, ever complained about Walk Hill, and I'm still not complaining. I obviously want to have a productive discussion that actually comes up with some sort of solution, at least opening the discussion of availability for teachers after school. I've heard a lot of reasons why some teachers are not staying. Unfortunately, they do not hold water. Some of the things that I know that they've mentioned are not accurate, and I find that, again, to be a little bit alarming, to have kids who are actively trying to get that extra help, but are not finding the availability of people whose obligation and duty is to educate these kids and give them the quality education they deserve.
Mr. Castle, can I just comment on the after-school program that you mentioned to help with the gaps? I find that, and especially in my case...
You have to come up and stand on mic, we can't hear you. We've got to get moving, so please be quick.
Just one comment, and I'll make it short. I'm grateful that that after-school program is offered. However, I think it makes it very hard for the kids to actually attend it, like in my case, because there is no busing available. And my son goes all the way to Ostrander. There's no way for anybody to come and get him at 4:30, so he cannot take advantage of it. He's in a special education program as it is, so he would greatly benefit from that program Monday through Thursday. However, we cannot take advantage of it because of those limitations. And I think we're not alone with that. I just wanted to point that out. If there's any transportation that could be arranged, that would be helpful.
Thank you.
A couple of questions about Panorama and who is funding Panorama educational surveys. I'm a little worried. This gentleman here was just speaking about our kids falling behind on academics, and now it sounds like our kids are going to be inundated with race-focused surveys, emotional surveys, and it just seems to me like this is just more of them learning stuff they don't need to learn. That's stuff for us to teach our kids at home, and they need to be focused more on academics, math, science, social studies, and things like that, especially since they just missed out on a year and a half. So that's really all I have to say. But I would like to know who funded Panorama. Are the taxpayers?
So, let me just,
Fine.
I gotta clarify something real quick, all right? Two things. One, we didn't tell the teacher to do what they did in the classroom. They did that on their
Is it
own.
acceptable?
And we'll have to address that. Secondly, the survey, you're speaking probably at Ostrander, I'm thinking.
I am speaking of
Okay.
Ostrander, yes, that is
So,
sixth grader.
the state is requiring that because our special education population did not perform well on the state assessments. We had many kids who opted out. Therefore, as a result, we didn't have a true picture of how well our kids would have done on that. But the state didn't care about that, okay? So we have to do the survey. It's a climate survey. There's nothing behind it. It's a climate survey to get feedback from the parents so that the school can improve. If we were not on that list, probably we wouldn't be doing the survey. But we have to do the survey.
Yes, but we paid for the survey, so I'm just
Well,
wondering
it's being grant funded.
from
So,
the American Rescue Plan, is that where it's coming
no,
from?
we got money from the state because we were cited at Ostrander. So I believe it's 50,000, and we're using that money to pay for the survey and whatever else we have to do. So at least they gave us some money to be able to do these things. So
What are we getting from this, though? What kinds of educational resources are our children going to be learning about? Because
well,
we fill out this survey.
it's not an education, the survey is not a curriculum. The survey is to get parent feedback, to analyze, to see what we could do to get better at Ostrander for our special education population. We had to do that. We had no other choice. If we were not cited, and if maybe all the kids took the test, there's a good chance we wouldn't have been cited. But because we have such a high opt-out rate, we have minimal kids taking it, resulting in the numbers being low, and now we're in a position where we got cited by the state, mind you, 18, 19 test results, where now we have to do these things.
Yeah, this is,
Okay.
So I need to clarify, because it
So
seems
we're
to
not
be
getting
some
educated.
misinformation out here.
Well, I went to the website and read all of this from the website. The Panorama Educational Resource, so we're not gonna get any, our kids are not gonna be taught anything from Panorama, so we're not getting any educational resources on.
I'm not, unless you want us, I'm not aware of any Panorama curriculum. It's the survey.
Yeah, the survey that will result in educational resources.
It's a
from-
survey that we're getting back feedback from parents.
Yeah, which will result in.
We just
what?
heard about transparency earlier. So now we just did a survey and now we're getting criticized for that.
It's a
So
state
what do we do?
mandate.
I'm
That's what
just
it is.
speaking up here. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm worried that my kid is going to be inundated with too much social and emotional learning instead of education.
Thank you.
Oh, Mr.
No.
Castle, just one quick point on the.
You spoke, we
board.
have to get moving. We have to get going here. We gotta move forward with the meeting.
Next meeting.
I'll
You
follow.
can call Mr. Castle tomorrow, and you can have a conversation with him then. We have to finish our meeting. All right. I need a motion. Oh, yeah, we gotta do that, I'm sorry. Let's stand for the pledge, call.